Thank you, everyone, for joining our second campus conversation. I'm Laura Lindenfeld, and I'll be serving as the moderator for today's session. Joining me for this conversation are President Maury McInnis and Rose Martinelli, Vice President for Strategic Initiatives. Thank you both for being here. We're going to discuss a range of topics, from how we are responding to the ongoing pandemic to updates on our finances and the Strategic Budget Initiative. I also want to leave time at the end for questions from our faculty and staff. We've received many questions and will attempt to get to as many of them as possible, along with taking some questions live. And don't worry, if we don't get to all of the questions today, we'll post answers to the website. Finally, all of the slides are available to download at stonybrook.edu/conversations. Okay, let's get going. President McInnis, so nice to be with you here today. You've been here now almost 6 months. How is it going?
Wow, it's really only been 6 months. I don't know whether it's the fog of the pandemic, but it certainly feels like I've been here a lot longer. But very importantly, I feel so warmly welcomed by this community, and I'm really energized by what I'm seeing. I'm thrilled by the way that this community has come together to work together on responding to the challenges of the moment. And very specifically, I'd like to call out our students who have been dedicated and resilient. They understand the connection between their personal behaviors and the impact that has on community health. And so because of that, we have had a very low positivity rate on our campus, and we were able to keep our doors open. I'd like to thank our faculty who have been flexible and determined. I know everybody would rather be teaching in person, but our faculty quickly adjusted, and they have been doing everything to deliver the best education possible. Our nurses, our physicians, our medical teams have not only been responding to COVID, but they continue to provide the leading healthcare options on Long Island. And our staff, goodness, our IT staff, our student affairs staff, our facilities staff, everybody has been stepping up, doing more in different ways, and enabling this campus to continue to function in these very strange and difficult times. It is really amazing to see what SBU can achieve in these challenging times.
Absolutely, and recognizing that you can't say this with exact precision, what is spring going to look like?
Yeah, I really wish I could find that crystal ball, because that would be useful to have right now. I mean, think about what time we're in. So it took America 3 months before we hit 1 million COVID cases. And just last week, we had 1 million COVID cases. That trajectory is very concerning. The pandemic is so unpredictable, but SBU is prepared, and we are doing well. Let's talk about what Stony Brook Medicine is doing. We have already opened some of our surge units. We have prepared a pre-emergency COVID sort of unit where people who have symptoms of COVID can be screened outside of our emergency department, and so that helps us keep our patients separated. We as a campus have such great protocols in place that in the, we proved in the fall we're successful. So we have mask guidelines, we have physical distancing guidelines, we have cleaning protocols, we have very extensive testing for our students, our faculty, and our staff, and that allows us very quickly to find any positive cases, and if so, get that person into isolation and their close contacts into quarantine. And obviously a big piece of that is that we have very good contact tracing that is enabling us to do all of that. In the hospital, we're very prepared for what might be coming. Our ambulatory care will continue working. We have all the sufficient PPE that we need. And of course, since the very challenging spring months, treatments have advanced rather significantly. And so our hospital and healthcare system is well prepared to face what might be coming this spring. So we are ready, we are prepared, and we are planning for a successful spring, just like our fall semester, sort of in a hybrid mode. But that said, there's so much that's out of our control. We have no way of knowing what the state of New York may decide is important to do in order to ensure public health. And so we should all be mentally prepared that December, January, and February especially could be challenging months. But we are planning to be open and to have a spring semester that'll look a lot like our fall semester. But we have to remember, fluid and challenging situation, no matter what comes at us, I am confident that Stony Brook will face this and get through it together with flying colors.
Talk about a complex set of moving parts, right? Back in August, I want to switch to financial information, which I know a lot of people have questions about. You shared a lot of information about the finances, both short and long-term challenges that we inevitably face. Can you give us an update on where we stand today?
I'd be happy to do so. It's not necessarily a pretty picture, but let's kind of recap where we were in August. So we knew that we were going to be down $25 million in state support. We knew that we had a loss of revenue of about $20 million from a smaller number of international students enrolling. And we had a number of unfunded mandates, and that included what we often refer to as the TAP gap, which relates to the financial aid we provide to our students, as well as the CSIs. Our faculty and staff are the heart of this institution, and those multi-year negotiated pay raises are certainly well deserved. But that said, they are not funded. And that additional cost is about $10 million. And in order to protect our academic units, we decided to take that additional cost centrally. There's a whole lot more details that we've made available to everybody on the Financial Sustainability website. And if you have more questions, I would encourage people to go there. But there have also been some changes, and so let me go through those as well. Probably the most significant is that we had fewer number of students who chose to live on campus than we had originally budgeted. So we had about 4,700 students with us in the dormitories, which is really about 50% of our capacity. And so the loss of that revenue in housing and dining is about a $24 million additional loss of revenue. And we also made the decision, rightly, I think, to not charge many of our doctoral students some of the fees that had previously been assessed to them. Doctoral students are really such an integral component of our research and teaching mission. And so we decided to cover those fees, but that is a loss of revenue for the institution as well. Additionally, we had an even greater TAP gap than previously expected. And so when you add those two pieces together, that's an additional $21 million loss in revenue as well. But there is some good news. There is an upside. In August, we announced hiring freezes, that we would be holding on most openings, attrition, that we would be very much scrutinizing savings or spending. And we've achieved rather significant savings from that. We had budgeted it at about $28 million, and it looks like we're actually achieving at even greater rates than what we had budgeted. So the work that our departments are doing to figure out how they manage without hiring new staff, how they manage in a fiscally constrained time, is really helping us. But that said, we are still looking at a best case, bottom line, $52 million deficit for the fiscal year 2021.
What are your assumptions behind that analysis? And I also noticed you described this as a best case scenario for spring. Hopefully on the optimistic side, we will find ourselves, but could you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Sure, I'm happy to do so. I mean, I think the most important thing for all of us to keep in mind is this is a highly fluid and changing situation. But, and maybe because of that, a couple of weeks ago, I asked our leadership team to get together so that we could talk through our assumptions, so that we could really scrutinize the assumptions we were making, so that we could stress test and see where we were budgetarily. And so we were looking both at the spring and the following year. And I'm going through all of this because I want everybody to understand that we really are planning and trying to think through every possible scenario, and that Stony Brook is doing that work. So if it's not best case scenario, let's talk about what some of the worst case scenarios could be. Probably the most significant is that something would happen with regard to the trajectory of the virus that would mean we would need to be in all virtual operations and not able to have students residing with us on campus. We are doing everything we can to ensure that that is going to be possible. But the revenues impact of that would be rather significant if they were not able to be here. And that would be about an additional $28 million in both housing and dining and probably some refunded fees. We also have significant COVID expenses, and those are very real. We have had to provide PPE, we have had to make available not just quarantine space, but to care for those students when they are in isolation and quarantine. We've done significant testing on our campus community, and that's been about $17 million in costs. In the spring, that was largely covered by money from the CARES Act. But if there is no additional federal funding to help with COVID expenses, we'll have to figure out a way to cover those costs as well. There will be a ripple effect to the diminishment of the number of international students who are enrolled at Stony Brook. Even if our future first-year classes rebound to the levels that we were before the pandemic started, we are inevitably going to have the ripple effect as this smaller cohort of students in this class continues through, even if we recover in future years. So that's probably a diminishment of $10 to $12 million in future years in terms of our budget. And I think no matter what happens, even if the U.S. does a great job of getting the vaccine out to everybody in our campus community, and I think we can all imagine that students are probably near the end of that priority list. Even if we're fully operational in the fall, there's probably going to be some kind of ongoing impact, whether it's a smaller class or not as many students living on campus, or we don't know, but there's likely to be some sort of impact. I think we should spend a little time also thinking about the ways in which things are going really well, because there are bright spots. So our research is going great, and there's really no reason to think that we should need to pull back again on that in the future like we had to in the spring. So that's going really well. I think another thing to emphasize is many of our peers in higher education have had to resort to much more drastic measures. Every day you can open the Chronicle and read about furloughs, about layoffs, about the elimination of academic programs. And so far, we've not done any of that, and we're doing okay. But okay's not okay, because we want to do better than okay. And that is why the work that we are doing and the Strategic Budget Initiative is so important. We, and I mean we, this is a collective we of the entire campus community. We need to do this work now so that we do not have to do those much more drastic and much more painful things in the future.
Oh, goodness. I mean, I'm imagining, what do you suggest needs to happen? Like, we open a credit credit card, a new credit card.
Yeah,
to
I'd love
resolve
to,
this.
I wonder how thick the plastic would be on the credit card that has a $52 million credit line.
Goodness.
So let's talk about the principles that we are putting at play as we do this work together as a campus community. So let's begin with the importance of openness and candor. I mean, that's part of what this conversation is about as well. I believe that information is power, and that it is so important that information be shared with the whole community so that we can come together in order to solve our challenges. But a big piece of this is actually about developing a mindset, the mindset of we are all in this together. And the mindset that we need to work on is fundamentally getting to a place where we have a willingness to change. Change is so hard. Change can be so difficult. But we're going to need some change as a campus community. And I need everybody to reflect on our challenges and really what our options would be if we don't come together and work on how we're going to change together and how we're going to get to this new and stronger Stony Brook. So the change we want to do now is so that we can avoid the more dire actions that many other campuses are choosing. So I'd like to challenge everybody to keep an open mind, to think about how we can work together differently, collaboratively. How do we innovate and grow? How do we grow our research? How do we invest in our areas of excellence? How do we remove the barriers that might be in the way of our doing that good work together? And all the while, I think we all have to think and keep in front of us that an important piece of this is for each one of us to be flexible, for each one of us to be open to compromise. I think if Stony Brook takes this moment to be courageous, that if we demonstrate courage now, if we do the hard work, not only will Stony Brook be stronger in the future, but I think we will catapult beyond other institutions that maybe are not demonstrating the same courage at this moment. Are we going to face headwinds? Yeah, probably. There are always going to be challenges in our way, but I think we have tremendous potential to overcome those challenges, to work together as a community, and to design this solution together. And this is actually a perfect segue into one of the other things we wanted to talk about today, which is the Strategic Budget Initiative. I am so thrilled that Rose Martinelli decided to join us as our Vice President for Strategic Initiatives. Those of you who have worked with Rose and those who will be working with Rose, I know you're going to find her collaborative, a good listener, inclusive, and very importantly, focused on keeping us all moving forward on this very important initiative.
So inspiring at such a challenging time. Thank you so much, President McInnis. That does give me a great opportunity to introduce Rose Martinelli, Vice President for Strategic Initiatives to the broader Stony Brook community. Rose most recently joined us from the University of Texas at Austin. A little chillier here, I think, Rose. Rose, you hit the ground running when you started in October. Can you remind us all about the scope and project plan of the Strategic Budget Initiative? And I'm personally so grateful to be able to talk with you today.
Laura, thank you so much. And I am so pleased to be here today with you all. And while I know we've all adapted to Zoom learning and Zoom living, I really look forward to the time that we can actually get together in person for these types of discussions. I was really happy to be asked to help facilitate and lead the Strategic Budget Initiative. It's been an opportunity for me to take a master's degree in learning about Stony Brook, and it's been an amazing, amazing introduction. Sometimes overwhelming, sometimes daunting, most times challenging, and most importantly, exciting. You know, all these emotions that I've had, but one of the things that's most important is the sense of possibility that we have at this institution. We have all the assets we need to be great. And so as I've worked with the institution and with everyone with whom I've met and had a great conversation with, I've been so impressed with the enthusiasm in the belief that we can be stronger. There's a dynamism here. It's truly amazing that if we can remove some of the obstacles and barriers that we put up, we can capitalize on our excellence and really catapult, as you said, forward into new ways. And so as we go forward, there's a lot of threats out there. You mentioned so many of the challenges that we have, but I believe that if we remain focused on our opportunities, there's nothing in our way. And so I'm really, really excited to be here and to be a part of this process. So as we start to talk about the Strategic Budget Initiative, I think it's really important for us to remember what were the ambitious goals that you set before us. And before we take some questions today, I'd actually like to walk through those objectives and then talk a little bit about where we are and where we're going. And so let me move to my first slide here. So of the strategic budget initiatives, there are 5 really aspirational and achievable objectives that we have before us. The first is to strengthen our research endeavors and really pursue collaboration as a way towards innovation. And I think there is so much here that I've seen already that gives me confidence that this is in reach. The second is to make sure that we integrate the hospital and the clinical practices with the academic campus. I think Nichols Road is more of a metaphor, and I'd hope it will become more of a metaphor and we can work much more closely together. We also need to figure out and ensure that our academic programs are really adapting and evolving to the needs of our students, our community, our society, and the workforce needs of the future. In terms of kind of removing the barriers and obstacles to innovation, it's really about removing duplication. And it's about thinking, how do we work more effectively and efficiently together as one campus? And then finally, how do we use this fabulous campus? And how do we optimize our resources and facilities to bring more and more people to this campus? And so when you look at these wonderful opportunities and you hear more about the wonderful priorities that are being generated all around this campus, I hope we can lay aside that this is an effort to cut jobs or reduce costs that are really about cutting and reduction, and that we can think more about what we're trying to achieve as an institution, which is all built in possibilities. So as we move forward, I want to talk a little bit about how do we do this great work? How do we take these ambitious goals and bring them to life within a process that is inclusive of everyone's input, that provides opportunities for us to engage together, and that really affords us the opportunity to dream big and dare big. And the dare is about change. And so as we get going forward, I want to spend a little bit of time here giving you a flavor of just what some of these task forces are up to. See if we can get that to go. So the first of our task forces that I want to highlight is our academic portfolio task force. This group is led by Axel Dries and Leonie Huddy, and they are really focused on some amazing opportunities that are a little bit of a combination of revenue growth opportunities and getting out of our own way. And so there's a number of things that I think are very important that they're looking at. One is, how do we increase revenue by the growth of our graduate degree programs? And how do we create new interdisciplinary programs at the undergraduate level to attract non-resident students for whom these types of programs are not available in their own state? And we have so many of these opportunities. The second area is, can we grow our non-degree professional and continuing education? We already do so much, but we're the biggest institution on Long Island, and I think there are so many opportunities both here on this campus and at Southampton to really move into this market and highlight our amazing gifts academically. The third is get out of our own way. Our SUNY policies, our NYSED policies and approach are in our ways. It takes about 2 years to get programs approved, and we are already working on removing the barriers there to speed through program approval processes. And then on the graduate degree side, how do we actually attract the very best doctoral students to this institution? How do we find ways to support them and make sure that their outcomes and where they land in their careers is a part of what their dreams are, as well as using them as part of their educational mission for teaching and research here on our campus? I think one of the interesting things is this task force just launched a cross-functional working group to look at tuition revenue sharing incentives. We'd like to look at these and perhaps address them or change them in ways that will incentivize collaboration and interdisciplinary work together. And so this is a really exciting part of this task force. The next up today is operations alignment. In many ways, this is foundational to the work that we do in all our task forces, which is about removing bureaucracy and some of the technological hurdles that impede all of the task force's ideas and innovations going forward. They are currently launching 3 very important task forces. The first is really looking at cost containment. There are more than $100 million in vendor spends on this campus, and many of the same vendors do the same things. And so can we power up the power of the Stony Brook dollar in terms of reducing costs and increasing service? The second is streamlining our hiring and recruiting process, which for all of us we know is somewhat challenging. The timeline from the idea of a job to the actual hiring is somewhat long, shall we say, and in need of some revamp and renewal. And then the final area is really about an joint working group with our campus cultural group to look at how we might improve and amplify the work that we do around facilities and resources and renting them out to external clients. Again, we're in our way around processes and practices and pricing and revocable permits and so forth like that. And so addressing these things will pave the way for us to really think about how to amplify our ability to attract others to use our campus. The next working group is Stony Brook Medicine. This is being led by Aaron Sasson and David Tanasi. They are both working with some external consultants that we have that are conducting an evaluation. These external consultants have just completed their report. They are all, this group is a group of former deans at medical schools, and they just completed their report, and I'll be sharing this with David and Aaron a little bit later this week. And what we want to do is just focus on evaluating the relationships amongst the institutions that are part of Stony Brook Medicine so that they collaborate and effectively work more closely together. Strengthen our governance, particularly around engagement and the transparency around decision-making and strategic planning. And then finally, optimize the way that our funds flow within the Stony Brook Medicine area to better support our research, clinical practice, and academic missions as we go forward. I just recognized I failed to introduce 2 of our co-chairs. For operations alignment, let me just say my apologies, Carmen, but Carmen Gonzalez and Michelle Singletary are doing a wonderful job there, so my apologies to the 2 of you. The next one of our task forces has the longest name and constantly confuses me. This is optimizing campus cultural, athletic, and facilities resources task force. It's got an awful long name, but we just got it optimizing campus going forward. This task force is led by Van Sullivan and AJ Nagaraj, and this is really one that's focused on revenue generation. It's really about the creativity around our auxiliary units in bringing more and more people to campus. And what I love around this is that they're focused on optimizing how we use this campus, optimizing how we use advertising and contracts and branding opportunities, and then scaling resources. All the things that we do separately that if taken together, we could really highlight and amplify going forward. Last but not least is our Research and Innovation Task Force. This is led by Anissa Abidargam and John Longton. And this is all about changing our culture. It's about embracing what I would call collaborative interdisciplinary research, strengthening where we are, advancing and incentivizing how to make our faculty want to become more productive in their research by leveraging the existing infrastructure that we have, utilizing our space to really think about campus-wide initiatives for innovation, and at the bottom, strengthening our standing in the AAU. You know, as we started our work within this group, we did a great deal of research to understand how we compare to others in the AAU. And we recognize that not many of us understand what are all those standings, what are all the inputs to the AAU. And so we'll be launching one of the working groups to really understand that as a campus as we go forward, to ensure that we all know how we contribute to advancing our standing in the AAU and really kind of catapulting us forward in how we work together collectively as an institution. So let's talk a little bit about the timeline. There is so much going on, and I will tell you, it's a little overwhelming to me at times. There are more than 200 individuals engaged in this work. Some are engaged completely in the work of the task forces in some of these working groups, and others are subject matter experts that really spent time with us when we started to learn about what are the opportunities and challenges. So as we get going, I want to share where are we. So we have already completed step one, which was definition of our scope. And that was the time of learning on campus and really trying to understand how we as the 5 task forces fit together within the Financial Sustainability Steering Committee. Where did we share kind of priorities and interests as we got moving? And where could we share input with others? And that was a very important part. We are now in step 2, which is our opportunity identification. And we're just about ready to wrap that out and send the, what I would call, list of opportunities and working groups to the executive committee leadership later this month for their input and feedback. But then that moves us going forward into what step 3 looks like. And I'll talk about that in a moment. Before I do, I want to talk just a moment about a survey. We plan to field a survey next week, maybe later this week or early next week, to really get your input into this process and to make sure that we're not missing anything that's important to this community as we really launch into the next step of the work. And so I would like to encourage the campus community to really step up and take the 7 or 8 minutes to participate and give us your thoughtful feedback as we get going. It's very, very important as we move forward to capture the community in all that we're doing. While there are 200 plus people involved, there are thousands of us that need to have their voices heard as we go forward. Step 3 is this next big hurdle. So as we prioritize the opportunities, we will now move into analysis and validation. This is really doing the due diligence to understand the risks and benefits of these opportunities, and it will provide a chance for all of us to participate more deeply, whether it be through specific surveys particular to a specific topic, focus groups, or actually we're going to need probably another 100 or so members to fill out our working group. So there's just enormous amounts of opportunities for you to engage with us. And if you have an idea that you want to share, please reach out to me or go to our website where there's a form that you can share that with any of us or with the task force co-chairs directly. A couple of last things that I want to say. We have 5 upcoming campus conversations with each of the task forces scheduled in late January. So there'll be 5 pretty much back to back, and this will be an opportunity for our campus community to learn more directly from the co-chairs and have your questions answered and your concerns understood by the campus co-chairs and me. I'll be moderating that event. So here we are, 9 weeks in to the Strategic Budget Initiative Phase 2. There are many more phases to go. And this is a really bold and ambitious agenda for us, and I'm truly excited by it. And it is absolutely necessary if we're going to emerge as a stronger campus. And as the president has said over and over, this is a bold and ambitious university. So let's get to work.
I'm curious, what keeps you up at night about this in the spirit of, what are the concerns about this?
I wouldn't say there's so much concerns as there is just so much opportunity. And the hardest part in embracing all these opportunities is sorting through with all that's going on, just so much that's going on. Our steering committee and the executive leadership is going to provide us with what I call the guidance that we need to sort through lots of ideas and help us to prioritize and sequence them going forward. But we have to be realistic. There are a million ideas out there. One of the worst things we could do is spawn off a million ideas wide and achieve nothing. And so what we need to do right now is what I'm really kind of engaged with is what will have the big impact, what will enable us to make those future steps and to be strategic in what we do short term and opening the doors to long term. That's the stuff that is exciting and a little bit anxiety producing, but I know that we can work through this together as a campus community. What I do want to say is this is an opportunity for us to make a lasting impact on this community. And with all these ideas and all this collaboration, I know we can do it. While change is hard, we can always do things better, more effectively, more efficiently, so that we spend more time doing the things we need to do that are mission critical. And we all need to do that more often, every day, every minute of our work. So let's keep our eyes on the big picture. Let's not get dragged down by some of the irritants that will likely come out of this process. But let's just build on this bold and ambitious university and make us even greater than we are today. Thank you.
Well, before we start to address some of the questions that we received, both during this session itself and in advance through the question form on the web, I wonder if President McInnis, if you have anything else you'd like to add.
No, not right now. I think Rose did such a great job. I think it's important that we get to the questions, so let's just go straight to that.
Okay, let me see what we've got here. All right, we'll figure out who's going to take what. What are you doing to influence, this sounds like a President McInnis question, what are you doing to influence SUNY and Albany to get us the help and support we need?
Yeah, wow, such an important topic. And I do want our community to know that my leadership team is absolutely focused on making sure that our leaders in Albany understand what we need. I can say I've had a few really good conversations with the chancellor, and he understands at a high level not only what we need to be successful, but actually what it is we bring to SUNY. The importance of Stony Brook as a leader in healthcare, as a leader in research, particularly in areas that are directly related to the economic vitality and future of the state of New York, and as an institution that is doing such an important role in educating and graduating a talented, diverse group of students from New York. And at a very high level, he understands all that and he wants us to succeed. So I will be spending a lot of time over the next few months, as will our entire government relations team, working with those in leadership in Albany to continue to advocate for Stony Brook.
That's great. Here's another one. You said COVID costs were in excess of $16 million if the state or federal government doesn't help with those expenses. What are your hopes and expectations out of potential state and federal support?
Yeah, well, like many people every day, I open the news and I have a look to see whether there's been any movement in Washington. And after many months of absolutely no movement, it does seem like there's some thawing of that glacier, maybe. But there's certainly no guarantees. There is absolutely no doubt that federal aid would make such a difference, potentially for the city of New York, the state of New York, and for higher education in general. We would certainly welcome with open arms that kind of support. But there are absolutely no guarantees. And so we need to be planning otherwise. And the important thing for all of us to keep in mind is even if that support comes, we have a $52 million gap assuming an open and safe spring. So the federal government is not going to be our salvation here. It may help, but it's not going to fix everything we need to do. So the work we need to do is we need to figure out how we operate more efficiently. We need to be open-minded and embrace change. We're going to all have to accept that change can often be frustrating, it can often be difficult, but doing that work will mean that we do not have to do the much harder and much more painful decisions down the road.
Acting now saves us
Right.
from further harm in future. Thank goodness for the strategic budget initiatives, Rose. It's really exciting to hear about all that's going on and how that can set us up for the best possible success. All right, here's another one. Along the same lines, don't we have reserves we can tap into exactly at times like this?
Well, we have. We have both have the reserves and we have tapped into them. They are at unsustainably low levels. They are at levels below what SUNY recommends that we keep. By the end of this year, we will probably have spent through about 50% of our reserves. That's obviously not sustainable and not something we can do in the future. That is why this work is so important.
All right. This looks like it might be for you, Rose. Is SBI modifying strategic planning in light of budgetary constraints? So how does the strategic budget initiative, I imagine, intersect with strategic planning?
Well, I would say they're exactly the same in many ways. We're building on our strengths through an exploration of what's possible and where there are strengths that we can capitalize and intersect for new strategic opportunities. Although it's really early in the process, it's working very well as we pursue these first steps. And I'm pretty confident it's going to lead us to success in reaching our bold and exciting and ambitious goals.
Great, thank you. Here's a question about mental health and well-being, such an important topic. I come from a family of psychologists, so this is near and dear to my own heart. We've received several questions from faculty about helping their students and colleagues who are suffering from mental health concerns. How are we handling this on campus, and are there tools that you can recommend for faculty?
So, I mean, being able to support our students and take care of our mission means being very mindful of the mental health concerns of our students, because our students with mental health issues, have a disrupted ability to focus, to learn, to thrive, to develop, and ultimately to graduate. Even before the pandemic, we saw a significant increase in anxiety, in depression, and suicide, really among everybody, but especially alarming in our young adults. And in an unusual way, being on college actually in some ways is somewhat protective, because our college students often have resources that other students do not. But that said, the pandemic has clearly exacerbated these challenges. We have seen increased rates of depression and anxiety. Students are really suffering from social isolation. For Stony Brook, and really for all of colleges, we really need to take a much broader approach to how we serve our students. We simply will never be able to hire enough counselors to meet every student's needs. What we need to do instead is take a public health approach. We need to focus on preventative work. We need to focus on early intervention work, hopefully getting to students long before they ever need the counselor. But of course, we need to make those counselors available as well. And we have done that. And in the pandemic, we have shifted to essentially 24/7 telehealth providing of counselors. And I know our students have really appreciated that. There is a lot more information on the mental health resources for our students on the Center for Prevention and Outreach website, and for our faculty and staff through our Human Resources Department. And we need to be very mindful of the toll that the pandemic is taking on our entire community.
Thank you so much for that response. Truly a complex and often devastating experience. All right, here we have another one. Given current COVID numbers, which seem still to be rising, unfortunately, I'll add, will there be hybrid classes spring 2021 or all online classes? Here's the crystal ball question again.
Exactly. I need that crystal ball again. And I would say most importantly, we just need to be prepared for anything next semester. Our students have demonstrated that their responsible behavior and their dedication and resilience kept us open last fall, and I believe can keep us open in the spring as well. They kept our positivity rates very low and really demonstrated what we can do as a community. I'm very confident in our preparations, and for now, we are continuing to plan to operate with the same hybrid model. That said, we will also be planned to pivot in whatever way we have to.
Here's a related question. Will there be layoffs if the hospital has significant financial problems?
Well, I have never heard any whisper even of layoffs, and there's a good reason for that. That is because the hospital has been a really prudent manager of limited resources. They have recovered very quickly after the last surge in the pandemic, and we are back in terms of, emergency room visits and ambulatory sessions and people going back to the doctors and work in surgical units and so forth. These things have come back. They also received very important governmental funding through the CARES Act, and we have sufficient funds to weather another resurgence of COVID. Very important to know. Our healthcare system is strong.
I'm afraid this next one might be for you again. Let's see, unless, Rose, you want to take it. Are there plans for SBU to provide an early retirement incentive?
Yeah, so any early retirement incentive program has significant upfront costs, and like all compensation programs, would really have to be approved by SUNY.
Okay. As a tenured professor, need I have any concern that my employment is not secure? What do you say?
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of articles lately that are talking about what role the pandemic might have on tenure. And I think there are probably even a few institutions out there that are flirting with that idea. I absolutely have no plans to do away with tenure, and I think that's very important for our faculty to hear. That's not one of the things that we are discussing. However, that is why we also have to do this hard work together. We need to be courageous. We need to find solutions to our budget problems. The things that we can work on together as a community to decide what is right for our campus. So my goal with this process, with the Strategic Budget Initiative, is that we will be able to avoid the really difficult things that many other campuses are doing. Many campuses, every day you open the Chronicle and you see another institution that has slashed academic programs, that has announced significant layoffs, that is moving towards retrenchment. I don't want that to happen to this campus, and that is why we are doing this generative, innovative, collaborative work together.
So everybody should really contribute thoughts to the document that Rose mentioned. Yeah, I read the Chronicle every day and I see this and I'm like, that's not us. Let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
All right, what do we have here? It appears many faculty and staff lines are not being replaced, leading departments to offer fewer sections. How can the departments have their voice heard before certain financial decisions are made?
So I'd like to begin by addressing this at the aggregate, because actually that assessment is not fully accurate. We have the same number of tenured and tenure track faculty in the fall of 2020 that we had in the fall of 2019. And we actually have more sections, more class sections. But that said, I get that that can be felt differentially. And depending on the situation of a college, of a school, of a department, that may not be the way that an individual feels that situation. As far as hearing faculty voices, that is exactly what the Strategic Budget Initiative is designed to do, to be open, to be collaborative, to hear faculty voices. Literally hundreds of faculty staff have already been involved, and there are going to be so many more opportunities for people to be involved in the future. And our academic portfolio task force is looking at just these kinds of issues that the questioner raised. And I believe that as we do this work together, we're going to create a roadmap that deals with both the short and the longer term solutions.
Another plug to get involved. Rose, do you want to add anything to that? Or
Absolutely. This is the most important part of the work, is hearing from our community and really engaging in the work collectively together. These are not binary choices. They are problem solving, compromise. How do we work collectively together is how we work and how we talk about these problems and opportunities as just that.
great opportunity to put those things that things that keep us up at night to the side and really focus on creating great ideas. All right, what's next here? What are the areas of emphasis for the university from a financial perspective going forward in order to ensure the university's long-term sustainability while also maintaining the mission and vision of the campus?
I love that question because that directly gets at the work we're trying to do. We are trying to be focused on long-term sustainability. And this is the work of the Strategic Budget Initiative. And we basically have two options. And one is that we figure out how to generate additional revenue. So I think Rose did a great job of outlining some of those opportunities, the ways we use our campus better, the ways we can generate both degree and non-degree educational opportunities, the ways we can generate new undergraduate degree programs that are going to attract more out-of-state students. There's a lot of work to be done in generating more revenue. And the second is the ways that we can diminish our operational expenses, the ways that we can save money there that does not impact our mission of delivering great patient care, great education, and the important research that we do. This work, this opportunity here to do these two things, generate new revenue, save money, this is on us. Yeah. We cannot assume that SUNY, the state, or the federal government is going to come to the rescue. But the good news is, I think this is imminently doable. I believe in Stony Brook. I believe in this community. As long as we come together as one campus, we can do this.
Hear, hear.
Do you want to add more?
No, it's just that. We can allow ourselves to be in a passive role and just watch it happen, or we can be at the table making these hard choices collectively together on behalf of all of us. And that's what's really exciting here. Truly
people of action sitting here in the studio today. We have a question from the School of Health Technology and Management. We've identified some external/corporate partnership opportunities, but there seems to be a lack of precedent or template to move these ideas forward. Will the Strategic Budget Initiative help? Rose, I'm going to throw this one to you.
All right. Well, this is a great example of trying to think differently. That's exactly what we need to do, engaging new partners and creating opportunities. So it's not always going to be easy, but we need to figure out how to help you do this, to remove those unnecessary barriers and really allow you to become as innovative as possible. So I think this is probably something I want to follow up with you privately after this meeting to learn a little bit more about what you're wanting to achieve, and to perhaps get our operational alignment task force engaged on helping you kind of work through this. But yes, we're there, and yes, we need to create templates to make sure that we can be nimble and innovative and quick as we go forward. So thank you for bringing up a great idea for us to explore together.
Templates and streamlining, I can see so much opportunity to make things work better.
Yeah.
All right, here's another one. How will the university learn from this pandemic to create an even more, I love this question, inclusive educational experience for our students in a post-COVID environment? What will we learn from this experience to better help us achieve our university's mission in 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, wow. Such an
Isn't that
important
great?
question. Yeah. We absolutely know that COVID has placed a higher burden on our traditionally underrepresented communities, and that's both from a health perspective and also a financial perspective. I think there's so many lessons to be learned here. I think first, we as a research institution should really be continuing to dig in. We already do a lot of this great work, but we should continue to remain focused on societal inequality. Second, we need to sustain our track record for providing equitable access and the success of our students from low-income and first-generation backgrounds. That is core to who we are. That is such an ingrained part of our mission, and we just need to make sure that there's no slippage there from the challenges. And third, we need to analyze how COVID has exacerbated inequalities, and therefore think about how can we work as an institution to help close those gaps.
Great. All right, one more question. I think we have time for one more. Here it is. Moving forward, besides emails and town hall meetings, what will the university do to keep the faculty connected and engaged with the university and each other?
Yeah, well, I'm afraid that for the meantime, we're still in this world, right? We're
sitting
still in
here
this.
in masks.
We're sitting here in the studio together, but wearing masks, and all of you are on Zoom. And wow, I wish it could be different. So for the meantime, we're going to continue to try to be open and candid with our community, provide all the information we can so that we can solve these challenges together. This really is meant to be not a top-down process, but a collaborative effort with everybody across this institution. I'm really pleased at how, despite the pandemic, there's been such a high level of engagement and participation, and I'm fully committed to providing as much information as we can, as soon as we can, and keeping everybody engaged. And we'll be doing all kinds of things. We'll be doing surveys, we'll be doing town halls, we'll be doing everything we can to make sure everybody has a chance to participate.
Well, that is about all the time we have for questions, but please do keep them coming. If there were questions we did not have a chance to get to, we will continue to update the FAQ section of the website. Additionally, there is a feedback form on the financial sustainability website, and more broadly, as Rose stated, there will be a survey being shared with all of you very soon. But before we end this session, President McInnis, do you have anything else you'd like to share before we conclude?
Yes, well, and thank you, Rose and Laura, and thank you to each of you who joined us here today. COVID, no doubt, has created some tremendous challenges for all of us, but it has also, really like nothing else in our lifetime, shown the critical importance of an institution like Stony Brook. I am confident that we are equal to this task because I believe in the strength and ingenuity of our community, and I have seen our demonstrated power of partnership. Through a shared understanding of the challenges we face, a candid and inclusive approach to strategy, and a willingness to challenge our assumptions and look beyond the status quo, Stony Brook University will emerge stronger. I really appreciate your continued support and understanding and your commitment to this institution. I wish you all a wonderful, peaceful, and happy, healthy holiday season. Thank you for being with us.